So I want to do a little presentation here, and I want to catch people up because we're going to talk about China today. And I think this is a good intro into why a China tariff might make sense, but why I think we went around it a weird way. So this video, tariffs are on, tariffs are off. We've been out of duck season, rabbit season. We don't know what's going on. I want to flash back to World War II and give like a super brief primer on how we got here and what's going on.
Because you were there. You know what it's like.
You know what? I think actually, not only was I there, some other people were there. So there was the Axis powers, as you can see here.
That was a good transition.
These are the Axis powers, and they were fighting. What the fuck? I'm sorry. Historical images. Can we please focus here? These are the Axis powers from Germany, Italy, and Japan.
That's our thumbnail for the episode.
And then these were the Allied powers, okay? Oh, the guy in the bottom right kind of played both sides. Yeah. He was kind of like, part of the war he was on one side, part of the war he's on. So we had the Axis and Allied powers, okay? Turns out, at the end of the war, the Allied powers won. And the bottom two here.
The American president famously only had like 2/3 of a head.
Yeah,
it was just
that
kind
was
of
the style at the time.
Right.
That was the FDR.
That's why he couldn't walk.
He was just missing a lot of
brain.
Polio. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It was brain rot. Anyway, the Allies win. These bottom two here were kind of destroyed, though. UK and Russia were kind of destroyed. So it's kind of like an American empire, not American golden age. All right, post-World War II, America's still got all the infrastructure. They got everything built, and it's a great time. And because they're the most powerful country in the world at the time, biggest military, best manufacturing, they set up the global world order basically in a way that benefits them. So there's the UN, there's the World Trade Organization, there's a bunch of other things that the United States sets up and is like the leader of that sort of organized global trade. And that is run for decades. Through the Cold War was the only other power that kind of opposed America was Russia. But then by the 90s, they're gone, collapse. So now they called it the end of history kind of in 92. America's won, it's over, there's no other. This way of working is going to be the end, okay? Then in 2000, again, this is like when we're little kids, the year 2000, something significant happens. I think Bill Clinton's the president at the time. They welcome China into the WTO, which is the World Trade Organization. They say, China, you are now getting the same trade rules as everyone else in the WTO. You can trade freely. There's no tariffs on you. You're all part of the thing.
We talking Deng era? Is that's
I don't know the Chinese leader at the time, but so it's 2000. At the time this happened, these are the nations that traded more with America in blue and ones that traded more with China in red. Okay? This is the state of the world at the time of the WTO entering China. Flash forward just 24 years, the world is drastically different. Now almost everybody trades more with China than they do with us. China now makes 1/3 of all manufactured goods, more than US, Japan, Germany, and South Korea combined. They have just leapfrogged the globe in terms of manufacturing. Half of the new world's industrial robots were made in China. Global shipbuilding, 55% in China. Actually not an important thing. They control the lithium-ion battery industry. They control the drone industry. They're leading in electric vehicles. There's a lot of areas that China has now become a strategic power in over the course of the last 24 years of trade. And, whether it's fair, there's many arguments that most sides will make about who's being unfair and what's going on and whether China stole IP or there's a lot to talk about. And I think there's merits on all sides here. But what I think America is seeing, I think through a really kind of unfortunately foggy, dense Donald Trump lens, but it's like that something is going on here. Something we're falling behind. Something in some way we need to stop this, and that is where the impulse to get these tariffs on China specifically comes from. And again, it's not just America. So I wanted to point this out because I think it's really important. Is that China has really focused on exports to grow their economy. That's their main thing. They had a real estate bust. Their internal stuff's kind of actually struggling, but exports are great. They're crushing exports. They're selling EVs all over the world. And every other country in the WTO, not just America, has been reporting more and more challenges. They've been flagging, they've been issues. This is a spike you can see in 24, but also just rising over the time of other countries doing WTO complaints or investigations against China. Specifically on the right, you can see they're coming from India, EU, Brazil, Australia, Turkey. Everyone has been kind of mad that all the manufacturing is leaving their countries and going to China, which has been just the global mecca superpower of manufacturing. So that's where we find ourselves, and that's why it's such an interesting time. even the tariffs of Trump's first term did not stop this rise. In fact, it's grown in the past few years. Biden kept the things. So that's where we find ourselves. And that's why a coordinated global, having a lot of allies working with you to maybe do a slowly but increasing tariff on China to keep some of the manufacturing out of there makes some sense. But when you're pissing off everybody, I want to show this clip. This is Australia.
The unilateral action that the Trump administration has taken today against every nation in the world does not come as a surprise. For Australia, these tariffs are not unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted. President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be zero.
God. That's all you really need to say. And that he says not 10%, and we have a 10% on Australia. Australia would be a partner that we'd really want on our side if you were trying to make some deal against China. And that's why you can see, I mean, this year hasn't ended yet, but in 25, the probes against China have dropped because people are focusing on America. Every one of these countries in the WTO is more worried about what America is doing than what China is doing with manufacturing. So that's where we find ourselves. But I wanted to set the stage on like how much has changed in the past 20 years and why this is like a big issue that's being talked about.
One of the interesting things I was reading about some folks who run factories and were just giving their experiences with this. One of the things they mentioned is that even like it's not just raw materials to make things. It's even, for example, you showed all the automation robots to build things in factories.
Yeah.
The idea that America is going to rebuild, or any of these countries, that basically the manufacturing has been lost because China just exports to everywhere and reduces their need to manufacture themselves. Like, they make all the equipment that you would use to make a factory.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, if you were like, you know what, we are going to build our factories here. Okay, where are we going to buy the robots? Where are we going to buy the parts?
Yeah.
Where are we going to buy, where's the expertise for building these things? It's all from China. So it's like, it's crazy. Like and why I have been shocked at the, again, those couple people who have been saying like, oh yeah, we can definitely rebuild, like Peter Navarro, we can build in America. It just feels, it's not lined up with reality at all. So
I mean, what you're saying is if you had kept the allies in good standing with the U.S., like if the U.S. had treated everybody better along the way and had said, let's come up with a plan to build manufacturing globally in a way that doesn't allow China to dominate this market in this way, we can all work together to make that change.
Yeah.
But we're isolating ourselves from them as well.
Yeah. That's the part that makes me the most frustrated, because it feels like a self-own for no gain. There's like not even a strategy to that. You're pissing off Australia and Europe and all these partners at the time when we need them the most for a coordinated plan. You bring up a really good point. And the reason why we need to have coordinated efforts is not just because it's a nice thing to do or because it might work better, is because in the past, what happens when you tariff a country like China is, let's say, it's a thing called transshipping, okay? If they're sending goods to America and we put a 50% tariff on them, then usually what happens is they stop sending it from America and they send it to Thailand first or Vietnam first, and they put a bow on it, or they add one little thing, and now it's suddenly made in Thailand or made in Vietnam or made in Mexico.
Yeah, the classic example in clothing is that you put literally just the tag on.
Yeah.
The final tag of the good, and then you send it on from there.
And now it's under a Vietnam tariff of 10% instead of 50%. And there's no answer to that unless that country's working with you, then this is what's going to happen. Even when they're not working with you. I mean, it's so hard to clamp down on global trade when someone is a better manufacturer. So here's an example. We've had a pretty coordinated global blockade or something on Russia. We've sanctions on Russia. In the meantime, suddenly, Finland and Kazakhstan are buying a lot more European and American goods than they ever were before. And it's finding its way across the border into Russia. Luxury cars that are not allowed to be sold in Russia are ending up in Finland and suddenly ending up in St. Petersburg. That's just what happens. And that's with like a coordinated effort. It's like, it's very hard to clamp down on it if they can't make the cars and they want to buy them, it's going to end up there. They'll find a way.
It's like how you want the Xiaomi SU7 and you're going to illegally import it through Mexico.
Right.
Yeah, you've been talking about that on and off the pod.
I have thought about it, and then I found out that I would be arrested for smuggling. It could be a massive jail sentence and fines. I do want that SU7.
We should bring Chinese EVs back to America. Yeah.
But I want what's ours.
Yeah.
Can I respectfully?
That brings up one last story I want to say. which is about this is a Chinese company named CIMC. They make like tractor trailers, like the chassis for a trailer. They just take steel, they bend it, they make it good, they make it cheap. It's amazing. They're really good at it. They were selling them in America and undercutting everybody because they were just better at it. American chassis tractor trailer guys were pissed. And they demanded a tariff, some way to stop it. This is first Trump term. It was granted. So what CIMC did is they rebranded to CIE Manufacturing with an American star and eagle.
Yeah.
And they set up a factory in America. They did what everyone wants. They made a factory in America. They brought their knowledge and expertise. They set up in a cheap area of America, and they started making these things. And then they noticed they were getting outcompeted by their American counterparts. They were like, damn, this is crazy. We just can't do it in America. And they looked into it, and they found out that their American counterparts were were buying Chinese ones from Vietnam, shipping them in and rebranding them. So the Chinese company was competing against American companies that were actually Chinese. It's a whole weird system that is happening that creates these weird incentives. And what I'm trying to get across is like the best solution is just to be the one that can make it good. If you're good at manufacturing, all these problems disappear. But if you're not, there's so many loopholes and whack-a-moles you have to do to try and protect your less competitive industries.
A couple episodes we talked about, I think, subsidies. That's kind of the other end of this, right? Like the carrot instead of the stick, is that if you wanted to put something into place to help an actual American manufacturer compete with a Chinese company, you could subsidize it instead of applying tariffs to the Chinese goods and go that route as well.
Yeah, I think that was like the Build Back Better plan a bit. They tried some of that. They did with the CHIPS Act. There was, it's mixed because there's like real problems with getting the funding. Companies that got the funding did pretty well. There was some growth in manufacturing. It's tough to say, but I would lean more towards that than this entirely stick route because I just don't think it deals with these very obvious workarounds that are.
Why also seems so clearly that the tariff should be targeted rather than blanket, because then you can be really focused and say, like with chips, that's a huge, huge, huge security vulnerability for America and anybody to have to depend on Taiwan for chips, right? If China goes and takes Taiwan, which is, the kind of nuclear scenario that people worry about, like chips are in everything. They're in everything. They're in your car door handle, not just your car door handle. They're in our
important Switch 2s.
They're in our Switch 2s. It's not just the things you think about, like your phone. It's in everything. It's in our fridges. It's in our smart devices around. Like everything uses chips now. And there is an increasing level of production that the rest of the world is trying to do, particularly China, with less sophisticated chips, but the best ones still come from Taiwan. That's what powers everything right now, including military stuff as we start to get military drones and the crazy like sci-fi stuff. And so it is so critically important to have chips. And right now that it's like not being manufactured. Up until recently, TSMC has opened a factory in Arizona that's starting to get up to speed and doing well. But that was like a big focus with the Biden administration that I think they did well. I think it was called the CHIPS Act, right? Yeah, with the CHIPS Act, where that was like, okay, TSMC, the company who makes all these chips in Taiwan, basically the only one in the world who's doing this, we got them to come build a factory in America. And that's like a critical vulnerability that is not solved, but it's better now.
In the process of fixing it.
Yes. Yeah. My understanding is like that's such a small amount of the number of chips that we need for any kind of sustainable future that if right now Taiwan were to be taken by China and China says, fuck you, Donald Trump, no chips for you. You don't get our chips. Like we are super boned, like super insanely boned.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough from Taiwan's POV because like if they do build the best chip manufacturing in America,
then America doesn't have incentive to protect them, right? Like right now, the entire rest of the world is super incentivized to not allow China to take Taiwan because then everybody else in the world is mega fucked.
That was my first thought when I started reading about this specific topic. I was like, if I was Taiwan, I
would not do this. I would not do this.
It's like slowly getting rid of my big shield and then handing it to somebody else.
You'll protect me, right? Yeah.
All right.